download and deluge. I've got it. Hi, yeah, so I'm Nissa. I call myself Think Social Tech, and I'm talking to you all today after a bit of a deluge of information that I put on the Agencies for Good Slack channel, which has massively grown as both a Slack community and as a group and a network, thanks to Catalyst over the last year or so. So it's a really nice opportunity to be able to share some of the work I've done as a freelance researcher in the sector, and just to tell you all about, so you know what exists and where to find it. I'm really excited to do it because you often don't get a chance when you finish up client work or a project to really share it or shout about it. And there's a few I think really important insights. You can make your own judgment on that that I think are buried, that I get a chance to kind of highlight today, because they weren't really key to the overall report, but I think they'll be interesting to those of you who are really thinking about digital maturity in organizations. Let me just share my screen. So yeah, as I said, I kind of do a lot of independent research, learning and evaluation style support in the social sector. Often for funders, intermediary bodies, those who design support or kind of sector level initiatives. And I tend to do things like interviews and surveys, or I get given a lot of data to make sense of, or I work with internal teams on whatever their problem is and kind of help them distill kind of what it is they want to do based on their needs and the needs of the people they work with. And I really wanted to lead with that, because a lot of what I'm going to talk to you today about is digital transformation and digital maturity. So just to be clear, I'm not the person you come to develop an organization digital strategy or to get support around digital transformation. I don't do any of that sort of work. I just know a lot about others who do, and no need to send me any of those charities or contacts or work yourself. But I also think it's important because I don't really advocate for any one approach or way of doing things. I just really like to help the sector learn from good practice and common practice and challenges and gaps. So like I said, I'm just going to give you a quick intro to some of the pieces of work that I have publicly available and that I've done with or around or through Catalyst, as well as Power to Change and some other clients. And then I'll just give a very quick overview of some of the key things you might want to take away from it. So you can have these slides afterwards, or you can find them all on my own website. I'll put the links in the chat in a second. And yeah, you can delve in for more information as and when it feels relevant. The first thing I really want to talk to you about is the Charity Digital Skills Report. And for those who don't know, it's an annual thing. It comes out every year, and it's based on a survey. We call it Charity Digital Skills, but it's actually for any nonprofit. And we get around 300 to 400 responses, and we ask a lot about all sorts of digital skills, challenges, priorities, support needs, and so on. It's led by Zoe Amar, and up until this year, the skills platform, and it's going to be supported by Catalyst this year. And it's a real kind of key port of call for evidence about kind of just general digital maturity and what's needed in the sector. Many of you will have seen the survey or the report, shared it, used it. And we're currently developing the questions at the moment for the 2022 round, which is going to launch. I don't have the date off the top of my head, but soon. We've developed the questions this week. We're user testing it next week. It will launch sometime next month. And if any of you have ever looked at the survey or the report and got really annoyed by it, please get in touch so that I can think about how to change or improve it. Because I know before I used to work on it, I used to think when I worked at Common Relief, oh, why don't they ask this? So if you have any of those in your head, please get in touch. If you'd like to inform the questions or input in any way, just drop me an email, because we're up for hearing your views. And it's well worth turning to if you ever are thinking about your own work or the charity challenges that charities and other organisations face, or you're trying to make a case to funders for support, because there's just a little bit of something for everyone in there. The other piece, this is quite old really now, but it's still quite relevant, and people get in touch with me about it pretty regularly still. Back in 2018, myself and Helen Lang with Catalyst, we examined and collated 50 different frameworks, guides, principles, and so on for digital maturity and digital diagnostic tools, those sorts of things. They're all available on a public Airtable. And from these, we identified 19 different areas that were assessed across the tools. And we've published a guide, kind of the key ones for charities that you might want to be aware of. And it's still quite, some of them are out of date, links have changed and so on. And we're not keeping it up to date so much, as it were, but actually most of the key ones are all still relevant and worth looking at. So for anyone who's looking for a tool to kind of guide a conversation, that can be a really useful starting point. And if anyone wants to develop a digital maturity framework, it's really hard. So it's good to be based on what else exists. And more about that in a second. Now, because another piece of work I've recently completed, which hasn't yet been published or shared, and hopefully will be in the coming months, I did for TechSoup Global, and I kind of expanded on that Catalyst piece, but looked at what global digital assessment tools are available with a specific focus on diagnostics, like those which organizations can take themselves online and get a kind of score or result or something that helps them assess their maturity. And I think that gives a more up-to-date overview of what exists across the world, but also I look at the areas of digital maturity they assess and where the gaps are and kind of emerging trends and so on. So it's kind of a more concise version of some of the previous work that I did for Catalyst. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with you, so I can't talk more about it today. And the final piece, which is a very qualitative piece of research. I did it based on 15 interviews with medium charities. We call it Charities Digital Journeys. It's available on the Catalyst site, and it explains what happens as charities develop their digital capabilities. So it maps out the 3 stages of their kind of journey as they see them, as well as the common kind of challenges, pitfalls, problems that they face. And I think it's a really nice counterpoint to some of these diagnostic tools, which show you a clear set of stages, 1 to 5, steps to take, things to tick off, because it just shows that basically it's really not very much fun for the people involved, and there's lots of highs and lows and challenges and all sorts of hurdles that they overcome, and that it's rarely described in the same way. So I think it's still a really nice piece, and there's some really detailed case studies of real organizations in there and how they undergo digital transformation, which are always nice to just understand the experience from the inside. But it's long, I appreciate that. And these are some of the hidden gems around digital maturity that exist, because I guess the call to action in this meetup was kind of, what is it? How do we define it? How do we measure it? Does it make a difference to the support? And the first thing I'll say is that very few people define digital maturity or digital transformation, particularly in the UK. You'd be hard pushed to find a definition. So this is one I've come up with in case it's particularly useful. And I'll give you these slides after to refer to. I won't read everything off them. What was really interesting when I did the piece for TechSoup Global is that digital maturity is only really used in the UK. Everyone else calls it digital transformation. They largely mean the same thing, although often it's interpreted in different ways. And the key difference really in some of the diagnostic tools is that some people see digital transformation just in terms of the kind of the IT, the technology that's used, whereas others see it a lot more holistically to be about kind of digital culture and ways of working and leadership. And actually that approach, kind of how people in the organisation think, feel and work in a digital way, is much more common in the UK than in other countries, which I also thought was interesting. Every different framework or assessment that you'll come across outlines their own, I say definitions, I think implicit definitions of what good looks like. And it's typically defined as a stage. So there's different stages of digital maturity. That's really common. And it's often in terms of those stages are outlined as specific areas or topics for transformation, like it might be a function or a department or a professional practice area. So just to add to the complexity of that, I've developed my own set of stages and areas that you can use if you see fit, which I'll talk about now. And these are based purely on reviewing common practice across what everyone else does. So I kind of broadly feel like these are where everyone's coming together. These are the stages of digital maturity that I often use. And this has come out of the Charity Digital Journeys research, but also we use it in the Charity Digital Skills Survey every year, with a caveat that because I made them, I get to tweak them every year. They're not really consistently defined, but the barely online used to be called paper-based, curious, starting out, advancing, and advanced. this is some results from the Charity Digital Skills Report last year. Interestingly, only 1% selected paper-based, so we combined this with Curious, and I think this year we're going to drop that category, but mainly because of the audience for the survey. If someone's not really online at all, they're not going to be taking it. And I had this little, oh, where's it gone? This little pie chart here just shows the distribution, but note that this is probably more representative of who takes the survey rather than the sector as a whole, which is why we don't really push the definitions or findings on this very much from the report. It's probably positively, like, people who are good at digital are going to take a charity digital skills survey. So I want to conflate the two. But they broadly, lots of people have problems with allocating organisations to a stage of digital development, but organisations, when completing the survey, seem to do it okay. we kind of looked at their average skills, which we ask about throughout the survey, and everyone who put themselves as Curious or paper-based scored lower across every single skill that they were later asked about, whilst everyone who scored themselves as starting out scored lower than those who put themselves as advancing and advanced. So they kind of, I wouldn't say they were invaluable, but I would say they were valuable is my conclusion from that. They seem to broadly help put organisations at a certain point at which they feel they've developed their skills and capabilities, which does shift over time. I also think it's really important to note that we keep finding in the survey there are still skills gaps across the board. No matter how advanced an organisation is, there's always more to be done, or there'll still be specific gaps. And we see this at every stage, but across everyone, just over 40% felt they had kind of poor skills in these areas. And these were the worst. So I think they're in order. Oh, you'll be able to see, anyone who's paying more attention than me can look at the chart on the right and see which is the highest. There we go. As I said before, there's lots of different areas of digital transformation. So these are the topics that people define as things that need to be more digitally mature. These are the ones that I've kind of synthesized from looking at all the diagnostic tools and frameworks available. In the Catalyst piece, I think I identified 19 originally, and in the more recent TechSoup piece, I kind of realized that some of them were actually really hard to separate and then generally looked at together. So these are the 11 kind of aspects of digital transformation or digital maturity that, as a sector of support providers, I guess we could call it, we tend to encourage organizations to think about. With a caveat that kind of innovation, accessibility and inclusion, partnerships and openness aren't covered very well. They're kind of newer areas, which I think we're all working on and thinking about a lot more. But I think, as you've seen from did I miss one? Aha, here you go. I just wanted to give this very confusing diagram again as that counterpoint to kind of say, whilst there are these clear stages and there's lots of skills organizations need to develop, lots of areas you could focus on for digital transformation, this is sort of what it looks like in reality. It's very different experience within an organization and not really how they would describe it at all. And worth having a look at, there's 9 different patterns and across the 3 stages that we sort of developed as part of the Catalyst Digital Journeys work. And I think they're really nice to show some of the key challenges and opportunities that arose as organizations worked on various digital products or projects or internal kind of skills development. One of the other thing that's starting to come out, particularly from the skills report every year, but also from the work I've done more recently with Power to Change, and some other work actually that hasn't been published from Comic Relief, is that it does the digital maturity development, like how organizations look to improve where they are with digital, whether it's internal skills or the technology they use or how they develop a digital product or service. It looks very different for small organizations compared to all others. So I'm not saying small, medium, large, extra large are all different. It's just that small will have their own specific needs. And we haven't really researched it that well. I wouldn't say we're 100% clear cut on what that should look like. and most diagnostic tools are designed for larger ones or early stage rather than dedicated to small groups. So that's kind of interesting in itself. And I think there are specific interest needs, languages used by certain sectors and types of organisations, and Fergus talk more about this, but community businesses have their own key kind of things they want to work on at different times, which I think are slightly distinct from charities, although there's some overlap. And the same for like arts and heritage organisations or organisations that own buildings, have a lot of members, will have their own distinct requirements compared to those who don't. I think when I did that 2018 research with Catalyst, we were very anti-diagnostic tools. I kind of thought, oh, there's too many and they're all rubbish. I don't think that's true anymore. I think actually lots of them isn't necessarily a bad thing, and that different audiences have different needs or will connect more with one organisation and their support than another. What we know is that they're just incredibly hard to develop, and to develop them well. And I think more consistency or collaboration or kind of work between those who develop those sorts of tools would add value. And there's never going to be a one size fits all, or a one tool has a lot of reach. I think what we're also seeing is that things like diagnosing digital maturity or putting an organisation at a stage of development is only really helpful at a moment in time. It's not that helpful to keep following that journey through a diagnostic tool, say, because often they're helpful as a starting point for conversation, or to access more support, or to work out what next. Often at a crunch point, they're most useful when an organisation is about to is just really struggling to keep up, or there's one person leading on digital change and they really need their leadership to kind of develop a digital strategy or look at it more strategically to inform what they do next or how they do it, and they just need other people on board and it not to be just them. That's when an extra person coming in or a tool to give an objective overview can be really, really helpful, rather than seeing one intervention, like working with an external agency, as the entirety of the journey. And time and again, we see that support is really crucial to success. Sometimes that support's money, but often it's a person or skills development or peer support that really helps organisations. I was trying to come up with some key takeaways relevant to this audience, so here you go. I'll have a pun. I think what we know, there are still significant skills gaps in the sector. I think that digital maturity is a thing and it's worth thinking about, because the support needs of organisations who come to agencies, whether you're a consultancy or a support provider, intermediary, even for my own work in research, it's the same. You know whether or not a client is ready to work with you or not. And it could be useful to think about in terms of thinking about when and how you can add most value, or what stage allows you to do the most satisfying work for you, or how could it help you identify the wrong brief or the right brief or client for you to work on, what questions you might need to ask. Those are really key things. I think developing your own ideas and understanding of what the different maturity of clients that you work with looks like is going to be really helpful. And just that when organizations look to develop a digital product or service, any kind of hand-holding can be incredibly valuable and transformative for that organization in terms of what they learn, but appreciating that has its own costs and implications and can be incredibly hard to manage, and it can be painful on both sides. So I guess more awareness of that is also helpful. And yeah, that's all from me. Please email me if you ever want to find out more about anything I've talked about today, or input into the Charity Digital Skills Survey. Please share the survey when it comes out this year as well. We need to get as many responses as possible, because lots of funders and other supporters use it and can make use of the data. And otherwise, yeah, thank you for listening. I hope I was on time, Ellie.
Thanks so much, Nissa. Yes, I think you just slightly ran over, but there was so much richness in there, so no problem at all. We'll go straight on to Fergus rather than dive into Q&A just now. And Fergus, over to you.
Thanks, Ellie. Yeah, hi everyone. This is my first session. So yeah, I'm really happy to be here. I'm Fergus Arkley. I'm a digital innovation manager for Power to Change. And over the next sort of 10 minutes, I'm going to quickly share with those of you who might not know who Power to Change is a bit more about us and the impressive community businesses that we support. And then I'm going to touch on some research we undertook to better understand the digital maturity of the community business sector. And then also touching on like how we then use this evidence base to refine a program to address digital needs. And then finally, just to finish, was just to sort of focusing on some of the current challenges we're sort of working through on adapting our existing diagnostic process to better identify and address digital needs. So a bit more about Power to Change. So we're an independent charitable trust. We're established in 2015 through an endowment from the National Lottery. Now, our vision is powerful communities, better places. And our mission is to strengthen the community business sector. So to sort of achieve our mission, we do this by providing support. So we have a mix of support programs which blend funding and capability strengthening. So an example could be our booster program, where we support community shares by matching the investment, or it could be our trade up, which is an accelerator program for new community businesses, where again, we sort of match any increase in trading. We also have a capacity strengthening program called, which I'm going to tell you a bit more about, Powering Up. So I'll just go on to tell you a bit more about community businesses. So what is a community business? Well, community businesses can take many forms. They can be a community farm. It could be a football club, which is community owned, like FC United in Manchester. It could be a community owned pub or shop. It could be community transport. I know we have Big Lemon here on the call today. It's a great example. It could be community media, like something like the Bristol Cable. So it could be really broad. And as Power to Change and community businesses, we're agnostic about the sort of governance structure. So many are charities, but there is also many KICs, so community interest companies, and other forms of co-ops, such as community benefit societies. I mean, the main thing is that they're run by the community for the community. And there's 4 common themes running through them all. So they are locally rooted and accountable. So they have a defined community that are always, there's always clear ways for people to influence and steer that community business. So they trade, and this trading can either deliver impact primarily by itself, or it generates surplus to then invest in community impact. And they also they deliver sort of inclusive and community-wide impact. So it's not just focusing on one very specific part of the community. They're looking to involve as many as possible. So community businesses work within the civic society. Hiya.
Sorry, could I just interrupt quickly? I think you're meant to be sharing slides, aren't you?
Yeah, can't you see them? Sorry.
No, sorry. I think I don't want your beautiful slides to be wasted. So there we go.
Sorry, I didn't realize that. Can you see them now?
Yeah, all good.
Yeah, that is a shame. You'll see them all. I'll share them with you all. Sorry for that. But yeah, there were some beauties in there.
Got them now. Thanks.
Yeah, great. All right. Well, so in terms of the impact, community business impact, basically they work within the civic society, but they're a bit different to your traditional charity. So one, they're sort of hyper local, so they work at a community level. And that can they vary in size, some very large, but they're always focused within a defined place. And also the trading and business model is essential. So in terms of digital maturity and transformation, the commercial aspects are prioritized. So they're looking at digital solutions which help them support stock management or booking systems or electronic points of sale. So in terms of the wider community business market, there's over 11,000 community businesses in England, and 2 out of every 3 are within the 30% most deprived neighbourhoods. So they're not seen, sometimes they're seen as being either in like these leafy suburbs, but they're not. They really are delivering within the communities that need them most. So hopefully that's given you a bit of a better, clearer picture about the value and breadth of community businesses. So I'm going to move on to our approach of getting a handle on the digital maturity of the sector. So prior to the pandemic, we were aware of the gap in understanding around provision of digital support. And with the community, with COVID-19 and the associated lockdowns, there was a significant impact on providing digital services. So this lightning implementation of community businesses providing digital services was an opportunity for us to dig deeper and get a better understanding of the strengths and challenges they face. So we commissioned 2 separate research projects. The first was working with the University of West England to evidence and share how community businesses are innovating to sort of provide digital enhanced services and to think about how they can offer more support services to their communities. So we learned a lot through this about the dynamic nature of community businesses and how they were able to adapt. But it also highlighted a real need for training and support for businesses to allow them to fully benefit from the opportunities that digitalization offers. Also highlighted the need for more support around their backroom services. So things like better Wi-Fi for their community, how they do contactless payments. And that sort of led on, and I know that Nissa, as she used this research for her research, but we then commissioned Nissa to do a discovery research to explore the challenges and opportunities facing community businesses to provide digital and financial support. So this research included in-depth literature review alongside, I think it was like 20 plus like community business interviews. So specifically for the digital phase, the report identified 4 opportunities which needed to be further explored. So this was about understanding digital and what was possible. So scoping digital solutions, moving forward with digital, and designing digital services for customers and communities. Now, each of these opportunities were then further broken down into how might we statements for improving digital capabilities. Now, both reports indicated that digital capabilities in community businesses and the challenges they face vary hugely. So the pandemic pushed them into invest in new hardware, adopt new digital tools, and move services online. However, they were still struggling to move forward with digital. Community businesses have a shared need for capacity and headspace to reflect on what they know and what they should do next. So the priority for us is to ensure that they have the tools and tech in place to generate income and run their businesses. Very few community businesses are in a position where they think they can move on holistically and think about how they can develop digitally enabled organizations and how they can plan for this. So with this in mind, we wanted to help community businesses to adapt and thrive within the new normal. So a key part of our work going forward is about brokering the most appropriate support. And this is based on the needs of community businesses. These can be their short-term needs, but also thinking about longer term around how they can pivot and remain resilient. Now, these support needs cover a wide range of capabilities from HR to financial modeling, but also to digital transformation. And our evidence tells us that many require more support with the technical and cultural skills to deliver more services and generate income. So while COVID-19 has exacerbated these skills gaps in digital, it also revealed previously untapped assets and knowledge and innovation within community businesses. So this is why we refer to the work stream as capabilities rather than, because we're equally concerned with the skills community businesses already possess as much as they can further develop. So moving on. So in the summer of last year, we started working with the Catalyst Network. So we came together with the Building Out and Catalyst core team to come together to sort of design a pilot offer based on the research we'd already done. So Nissa's research and part of a revamped Powering Up program, which I'll tell you a bit more in a second. So we spent a lot of time going through a discovery journey, building on learnings from the initial program. And we went through the whole double diamond, so divergent, convergent. And we found, the findings that we got to was that community businesses lack space, so that's in terms of time and capacity to consider digital, and that creating exploring space is essential for them to move forward. We also found out that basically we needed to work on the digital culture, and that it's really difficult within community businesses because it seems that this whole, like, the responsibility of digital lands on one person's shoulders, And this is normally either the youngest person, because they seem to either get it, or it's the person who has like a link to finance. So we had to really sort of break that down and make sure that that digital was the responsibility of everyone. And then through the design process, we also found the design process provided us with the business case to actually recruit 3 digital leads. These were to help provide support to community businesses and the program team to better understand the needs in collaboration around the solutions. So a bit about Powering Up. So Powering Up is a capability strengthening program. So each community business is provided with a community business connector. This community business connector is a key strength where basically they provide a consistent guide to assist the community business to maximize the opportunity they're on. So they help to arrange the support, they help to understand their needs. We're building on the first iteration. We've strengthened the new offer significantly. So we've increased the capacity support budget. So each community business gets around 12K to spend on getting support. They also get an 8K unrestricted grant. So this has helped them to as an enabling resource to help them engage with the capacity strengthening journey. So this could be to invest in staff time, software licenses. So we opened up the window in December, and I'd like to tell you that we recruited 21 applicants under the program. And a bit more about their digital maturity. So as part of that process, we wanted to work out, we wanted to know what the digital maturity of the community businesses were. So we wanted to get a diverse mix on that first cohort. So to ascertain this, we used a rather crude question, but based on the sort of questions that Nissa shared earlier about helping community businesses to sort of self-identify. So we asked them if they were struggling, basically where they were on their digital journey. So were they struggling with the basics? Are they starting out with digital, but don't have a strategy in place? They're curious, have some basic digital in place. They have a strategy which includes digital, and digital is integral to their strategy and embedded in everything they do. So interestingly, we had majority, so nearly half of them said they were curious, but we only had a very small amount of 3% were actually applying in, saying that they were struggling with the basics. But as in terms of taking down from the 112 we had and then back down to the 21 that we selected, we tried to get that, like I said, we tried to get that diverse range, but we had majority, around 48% were say that digital is part of their strategy. And we weren't able to bring any through that said that they were struggling with the basics. They just weren't able to demonstrate sufficient quality within their application. But we had a good range of community businesses come through, good range of models. So we had a pub, we had a gym, we had shops, we even had a skate park, but the majority were community hubs. And we have some impressive demographics as well. So 92% were within the 1 to 3 IMD, so that's indices of multiple deprivation. We had 40% were led or represented by minoritized ethnic communities. So, and 60% had youth or were led by youth or had youth represented. So I'm presuming now you're sort of waiting for some juicy nuggets about like how we're like embedding digital in how we're embedding sort of maturity into our diagnostic process. But this is like basically where we're at now. So we're in the middle of trying to work this out. So we know from the previous Powering Up program that an existing holistic diagnostic process really worked well. So this is where a connector would have a conversation with the community business and to take them through the journey, and it would be based around some key trigger questions, but they would build trust and have a conversation, and that's where the diagnostic would come from. But what we have learned also is that community business connectors are not digital experts, and they lack confidence in asking the right questions. So this is the reason why we've recruited these digital leads to help the community business connectors to understand how to introduce digital. Now, the challenge we've got is around integrating the digital aspects into an existing process, and how we do that while still building trust between the connector and the community business. I mean, some of the issues we've got is like how also around what outputs we want to look for. Like, what do we want the diagnostic to come out with? Is it a canvas? Is it a support plan? And how dynamic are these outputs? Like, should they be reviewed regularly over time? I mean, the final thing is like, is diagnostic the right term? Like, we find that it's like a bit of a turnoff and doesn't really describe this sort of collaborative and supportive process that people are going through. So we're wondering, like, is there a better term? So yeah, that's sort of an indicator about where we've got to. I hope you found it interesting. I'm keen to hear any questions or reflections on the challenges that I've shared. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Fergus. That